salary. The human cost of upper-class dining. Let's give him a shot. Let's give him a shot.
I should get a real job. But I'm not a salary man. I'm salary man.
Okay.
Gross.
Yeah, I have to agree, but you still did it, man. Actual just shivers down my spine. Shivers down my spine.
If you've been following me for a bit now, you'll know that I love baking.
Based. Instantly. I shit on this guy heavily for his video about people not supporting him financially and his commentary on what that means and what it means when they tell him why and so on and so forth. I shit on him relentlessly. He gets a point. Guy who's into baking can't be all bad.
I'm always looking to expand my horizons by trying new and more difficult things. Simply to see if I'm capable of it.
Absolutely fantastic.
While I do enjoy a good challenge, one of my favorite things to make is a simple loaf of white bread.
Careful now. Careful now. Don't become like reverse pretentious.
I first made it when I moved to America and found that store-bought bread was loaded with sugar. So I thought to myself,
okay,
why not try making it? I found a recipe from a reputable baker and just went for it.
Bro, we're talking about a basic loaf of bread. What do you mean a reputable baker? You've got to be, you're being flowery, okay?
Bread has 5 simple ingredients. 7 grams of active dry yeast. Other than those, the only thing you need is some time, patience, and a bit of elbow grease doesn't hurt.
You also need heat. Debunked. You also need heat. Debunked.
Financially once again.
True. Thank you, OmniSlash. Although it pains me.
Or a stand mixer if you're lazy like me. You mix up the ingredients in a single bowl. And what makes bread fascinating to me is that despite its complexity, it's an ancient creation. It's old enough that there's no solid consensus on when it was invented.
This is kind of cringe and pretentious because, I mean, you can sort of look at everything people have ever done through this lens, right?
There's evidence that it could be as old as 30,000 years old, and after all that time, it's been a staple in cultures across the entire world, to the point where it's referred to in numerous religious texts. It's delicious, versatile, nourishing, and above all, underrated.
Sorry, what? What do you mean it's underrated? No, it isn't. People often wax on about the incredible sensation of smelling freshly baked bread. That's often listed as people's favorite sensory experiences, right? People hype the out of homemade bread.
Bread came into existence because some brilliant people millennia ago discovered.
Japanese people underrate bread? I don't know about that one. Depends. Okay, if we're talking broadly, there is some bread cult stuff in Japan. There are some absolutely sicko mode Japanese bakers and baking fanatics in Japan, for sure.
The miracle of yeast and fermentation. And was
the miracle of yeast and fermentation? I never want to eat bread again. It's over, I'm done.
Born from the desire to create something new, different, and filling. So what's the difference between bread and something that you'd find at a 3-star Michelin restaurant?
Oftentimes nothing. Often there will be a bread course and there will be bread. The answer is nothing. The answer is there is not.
Fine dining is all about taking ingredients and discovering new and complex ways of turning them into a dish that the average person couldn't imagine.
People argue over what counts as fine dining. There is a place in London called Ikoyi, which sounds Japanese, but is in fact, West African? Whatever. And they are trying to push things and do new things. And I think on the basis of that, the head chef there states that he does not consider what he's doing to be fine dining, but rather refined dining, which is kind of, pretentious to comment in that way, in its own way. I don't think fine dining suggests new or experimental, but more elevated, top tier.
Some would even go as far as to say that it's art or even performance, since the way it's presented to a diner is often, not necessarily. Sometimes, many times, you will literally be given bread at the start or in between courses. You might have like a bread
a bread course where they say, make sure you hold back some of it because it will go well with the next course or whatever. So,
well, performance, like a magician's trick that you get to witness.
This is often true, though. It's just have a little bit of a problem with the characterization of fine
The
dining.
result, but what happens behind the scenes is a mystery that heightens the reveal, the feeling of.
It's quite popular to have open kitchens as well. It's quite popular to have a chef's table fine dining experience where you can really clearly see exactly what's going on.
How did they do that? They're made by people who want to elevate food beyond most people's understanding of it. But with the creation of food, there's always the question, what was the cost behind making it? And I'm not just talking about the monetary value, but the cost on an ecological, human, and societal scale. Is the creation and sale of fine dining worth it beyond its taste and presentation? I don't believe so. Philosophically, I am not a fan of fine dining.
Philosophically.
I have never been to a fine dining restaurant.
Shut the f*** up. Yeah, I could tell, mate.
Some people might think that I lack credibility, but most people...
You can look into it yourself, okay? My first person, my value of it as a primary source is limited. I have not eaten at that many restaurants that could be described as fine dining. But they, like, if I'm going to spend money, that's really what I want to spend it on. But you can spend a great deal of time, but essentially researching them, right? Tons of content, but
people like my wife and me can't afford $600 per person for bite-sized dishes.
It's not necessarily $600 per person. Could you afford it if they were gigantic? Also, if we're talking like if you're spending like $600, it's probably going to be somewhere where it's like a 14-course tasting menu. You're going to be stuffed. But also, these experiences don't have to cost that much. Like there's stuff. Like here's the thing: you can get all snobby about what counts as fine dining. There is a restaurant I'm looking at that has multiple locations, including in Manchester. There are $600 per person is like absolute top end. $600 per person is what you're going to spend going to the Fat Duck, celebrity chef Heston Blumenthal's restaurant for Christmas. That's like £450. It's about what, like $600? There's a place called Six by Nico, which I think one could count as fine dining. Like the cheaper lower end, maybe the lowest end of thing you could possibly count as fine dining, maybe. People will get snobby and argue about it, but let's go, yeah. They do the little, so they take a concept and they have a 6-course tasting menu that changes every 6 weeks. So they might have one that's like, the theme is the chippy, fish and chips. And they will have novel takes. Sorry, how much was that? £48. £48 for a 6-course tasting menu. £35 for the pairing. So they'll do like, this is their version of cheesy chips. Right? Well, looks like a deconstructed steak pie. Stuff like that. So this is the kind of thing he's describing you'd get when going to a fine dining establishment. Reimagining and pushing what people expect from food or understand from food and, changing it. I wonder if he'd count that as fine dining. And if he did, £48 a person, plus what, a drink each, if you just want to do one drink each, you're spending less than £200 on a special night out. That's fine.
Criticism should be allowed regardless of one's direct experience.
Sure.
I can critique the diamond industry without owning diamonds. The best chefs in the world have for years been cultivating and romanticizing the idea that unique and innovative...
Can you say it's not worth without having experienced it, though? You can comment, of course, on the ethics of it. No reason not to talk about that. Is he going to talk about actual specific examples, or is he just going to say all these restaurants abuse unpaid labor or something?
Dishes can only be created through excessive dedication to your work, spending every waking moment thinking about food, allowing yourself to be exploited for your labor with the aim of improving your art, and in many cases forming a cult-like attachment to the masters.
Salary, did you research this? You don't have to go and eat at a fine dining place. But if you're going to make these claims, I don't think you can do it off the back of a movie and a TV show.
There are two pieces of media I want to look at as part of this video, which explore the world of fine dining from different angles. The FX show The Bear and the 2022 film The Menu.
I watched The Menu. I have not seen The Bear. What I have heard is that my girlfriend was told by her co-workers that The Bear is mostly a lot of screaming.
Directed by Mark Mylod and written by Seth Rice and Will Tracy. Both The Bear and The Menu have received widespread acclaim from both critics and audiences, especially The Bear, which is currently considered to be one of the best shows on television.
Okay.
The Bear's story goes between being a drama about family and the traumas that come with that, and what goes into the creation of complex dishes and running a restaurant. But as the show...
Gonna be real, that looks like a spatchcock chicken with some with some just slowly cooked capsicum. I don't know, man.
There's been an increasing emphasis on its fine dining elements, including how incredible it is and its importance in the culinary world. For those of you who don't know, The Bear is about the young prodigy Carmen Bazzato, aka Carmi, who after years of training at some of the world's finest restaurants, returns home following the tragic death of his brother, and after inheriting his ailing sandwich.
Something just popped into my mind as well. He talked about Michelin star restaurants and establishments, right? He seemed to have been using that interchangeably with fine dining. I wonder if he's aware that there are like Michelin star street food carts. Not many, but there are. And there are a lot of places that just do one dish that will have a Michelin star. Literally just a soup, and it's just because it's good and the service is really solid, right?
Restaurant.
Granted, this video is about upper class dining, but I figured since he mentioned Michelin star ratings, you know.
He aims to turn it around. When he first arrives at the restaurant, it's a bit of a mess. The staff are untrained and apathetic, the kitchen and dining area are a disaster, the food is sloppy, and Carmi's cousin Richie has been trying to run things in his own unique and terrible way.
It's like heckin' kitchen nightmares.
By which I mean yelling and getting in the way of everyone. Fields hovers over him, whispering insults into his ear, belittling his skills, questioning Carmi's presence in his kitchen, telling him that he's worthless and other abusive behaviors. But Fields is the best, so Carmi puts up with it. McHale himself has said that the character of David
I have a suspicion that this is a mashup of certain celebrity chefs.
Fields was based upon the real-life chef Thomas Keller. This happens early into season 1.
Thomas Keller, that's familiar as hell.
Was based upon the real-life chef.
Hold on. I was portraying Chef Thomas Keller, the actor confesses right away, but is quick to explain, and I don't think he is as awful as I was, but he does whisper at his employees. Keller, Thomas Keller, is he the guy who does, like, British... Hang on. No, he's not. Why is he so familiar? What's his restaurant? Whatever, it doesn't matter.
Chef Thomas Keller. This happens early into season 1, and with its inclusion, many assume that the Bear was making a clear statement.
Yeah, he's a celeb chef, but I don't remember specifically. I mean, of course he's a celeb chef, otherwise why mention him? No one would know who he was. But
that
yeah.
The cost of becoming one of the best chefs in the world is too high for anyone, and that the methods some chefs use to cultivate talent are too toxic to justify the creation of haute cuisine. As the show progressed, though, it seemed to step away from this thesis.
Alma Ebby says salary would not survive a professional kitchen environment. I couldn't cut it either. Even with like super chill bosses, I couldn't cut it. The timing pressures of cooking at home are stressful enough. Doing that as a job, I would, well, let's be real. Maybe I'd adapt over time, but it would be a very rough experience at first, at the very least. I know it would be a very tough. French Laundry! Okay, if that's the one. French Laundry, and he has that other one. Okay, that's why I know who he is. Okay, of course, yes, he's famous as he's Omega famous. What's the other one he has? Per Se. Per Se is another one of his restaurants.
Throughout the first season, my and many other people's assumption was that by working at a sandwich restaurant, Carmi would rediscover the value of creating simple, delicious foods that don't require intense prep and sourcing expensive, exotic ingredients.
And also, like, might not make you fulfilled in your pursuit of your art, right? And also might not make you as much money either.
Something which I personally like the idea of, but at the end of season 1, they made...
What about the timing pressures of playing music? That is very different. Timing in terms of the timing of a piece, playing rhythms in time and whatnot. Very different from, if I leave this for too long, it is overcooked and it is... I have to have this ready by this time, and I have to have everything ready, all these different dishes ready to go for the table at the same time. That is a nightmare to me. That is hell to me. No.
Made it clear that it wasn't going to be the case. The menu, on the other hand, revolves around an escort called Margot Mills, played by Anya Taylor-Joy, after she's invited by a client to a high-class exclusive restaurant on a secluded island, run by renowned chef Julian Slowik, played by Ralph Fiennes. After some time there, it becomes apparent that something much darker is afoot.
True.
And Slowik doesn't intend to let his diners leave the island alive, and produces a bespoke menu that reveals their secrets and vulnerabilities.
Ooh,
with a
spooky, huh? Spooky. Like, there's nothing wrong with being a... Like, let's say you're one of those sick food stalls that just does pho, or just does a soup, or just does this, or just does that. That rules in the same way that being a sort of normal rock band, right? Or a band that just does weddings, it rules and is cool. But some people want to push things, right? It's different things. And when someone has a drive for that, they're gonna do it. Like, you can't stop them.
final course being a performative piece in which he and his staff and all the diners perish. The film is sort of a dark comedy, and as you can guess, a satirical take on the world of fine dining. The menu is a critique on what the dining experience and the culture surrounding it has become, whereas the bear kind of oscillates.
Has become. Has it? I think this is ignoring the breadth.
Between examining the flaws of fine dining and
I think the menu portrays more what a normie perspective on it is than what it really is.
borderline worshipping it. As I said a moment ago, the bear begins with Kami inheriting his brother's struggling sandwich restaurant. Kami tries to turn things around using his culinary experience by buying quality ingredients with his limited funds, changing how things are run in the kitchen, training the other employees, and showing how they can do
It's
things
just like a heckin' Kitchen Nightmares episode.
better, even though
Wahoo.
none of them are really keen on the idea at first. The restaurant also came with a substantial amount of debt, thanks to Kami's late brother Mikey's mismanagement, who also borrowed money from their uncle Jimmy to start it up.
Jimmy's gonna take your legs. You better. You're not selling sandwiches. You better sell something though, boy, or the next corned beef is gonna be made with your calves. Capiche?
Things are bad, and even though Kami does his best to improve the quality of the food and the efficiency of the kitchen, it's an uphill battle. That is, until he discovers a bunch of money Mikey left behind in some tomato sauce cans. Yummy botulism. With this substantial windfall, Kami and Sydney decide that instead of paying off the existing debt that the beef has, they'll use the money along with another loan from Uncle Jimmy, who is most definitely in the mob.
He has a mobster face.
To transform the beef into a fine dining establishment with the goal of earning 3 Michelin stars, which, as of 2024, only 153 restaurants in the world have that honor. So yeah, no pressure.
Yeah, it's almost as if it's a drama.
With this change, Kami and Sydney's goal becomes clear. Be among the best in the culinary world. You might expect that since the bear has illustrated how toxic the best kitchens in the world can be, that this will become a story in which these chefs learn that great things can be accomplished.
Do we know how many? Because they're obviously the celebrity chefs, and the head chefs then are less celebrated and less well known, who are known to be very harsh masters, so on and so forth. Do we have any numbers, any data on what sort of percentage of top-end restaurants are that brutal? I'd be interested in learning. That would be really interesting to me, actually. I think viewing this through the lens of a couple of fictional shows, I don't think this is a good way to do that.
In a more stable environment. But Kami incorporates the toxicity learned from people like David Fields into his leadership. And despite there being some hints throughout the show that this isn't the way, it's not really leaned into enough. You see, fine dining restaurants in the real world have developed a reputation for their high-pressure, low-reward environments where anyone but the people at the top of the hierarchy have to tolerate harsh criticisms, various forms of toxicity, and some bizarre rules.
I'm sure this is the case for some or even many. There are a lot of top-tier restaurants that actually go out of their way to present another kind of image. They go out of their way to, even on their socials, celebrate lower-level staff, celebrate people from the kitchen for their accomplishments in a given month, and so on and so forth. This feels like an impression received entirely from, like a couple shows.
The Danish restaurant Noma, run by René Redzepi, is a 3-star Michelin-awarded restaurant and is considered one of the best dining establishments in the world that sells multiple course meals for as much as $500 US per person. One ex-intern, Namrata Hedge, revealed to the New York Times that during her 3-month stint at Noma, her time was predominantly spent creating trompe-l'oeil beetles, which involve letting jam set using stencils to carve it into the shape of a beetle, which would then be served to customers in a glass case. She would prepare 120 of these beetles every day before service, while not learning much else in the process. But to top all of this off, not only was Namrata not paid for her internship,
that should probably not be happening, sure.
She was forbidden from laughing. If you're an aspiring chef, getting an internship...
So here's the thing. You hear stories of people who are like, I worked here, but I could not function under ex-head chef, but they're still chefs, and they went somewhere else. So there are places that are like this, maybe even worse. Some that aren't as bad, but are still messed up. But there are certainly places you can go because of all the stories of people saying, I could not work under that guy, I had to go somewhere else.
At one of the world's best restaurants should be a dream come true. It's an opportunity to gain a seemingly endless wealth of knowledge.
I wonder if he's going to talk about trad, like sushi training, if he's going to get into that.
Some of the most celebrated...
Should be getting paid. Unpaid internships are bullshit, but what she was doing is completely fine. Yeah, that would be my take her to Goon. She had to sculpt 150 beetles a day. Yeah, some people get up at 2 a.m. to stack 150 shelves. Like, probably for, well, okay. Not for less money, because she wasn't getting paid, but less money than she would have gotten paid if she wasn't getting scammed.
Culinary geniuses.
The job itself was not the problem.
In the world. But instead, people like Namrata end up doing work which is barely any different from working on a factory production line. An internship at a world-class restaurant is a big deal though. Yes, it looks great on a resume, but
I do find it to some degree hard to believe it wouldn't develop at least discipline or motor control.
Fine dining is extremely complicated and varied, so being asked to do one thing hundreds of times a week when there's thousands of other things to learn makes it a practically worthless experience.
That's called practice. What is he talking about? What are you talking about?
And literally worthless when you consider the lack of pay.
The lack of pay part is messed up.
Restaurants rely heavily on the labor of interns, and before the pandemic, it was reported that Noma had 34 paid cooks and around 30 interns, all unpaid.
Oof.
They later announced that they'll start paying their interns.
This is juicy stuff. This is like, that's awful. Yeah, I agree. He gets a point there.
But considering Redzepi recently announced that at the end of this year, Noma will be shutting
now everyone's unpaid
down and instead focusing on global pop-up restaurants, it's too little, too late. Redzepi may not be as bad as his teachers, but if he's instructing his cooks to not laugh while not providing them with a decent variety of skills, then
3 months is a very short amount of time to develop skills. She was an intern doing bitch work. How much do you think she'd develop? How much do you think she should have developed over 3 months? Like, what do you...
And the spirit of those that he's learned from is still there. We as outsiders have sadly sort of accepted abusive chefs too, and even turned it into entertainment. I'm sure that many of you have seen
Idiot Sandwich,
maybe even shared a clip or
what are you
of Gordon Ramsay berating other chefs mercilessly on his shows. This is well known by this point, but Ramsay's behavior on his shows is heightened and choreographed
of course
for the sake of television.
But I believe he does have that reputation for real.
British produced shows, you'll see a man with a drastically toned down personality.
It's an amazing place, an amazing setting. I see someone that is hurting.
Yeah.
For what reason? Glory days, Michelin star?
Possibly.
Not as look at me in the eyes! Not as pissed as I am! You are! Donkey!
Ramsey's portrayal of
And the music in the American version is so bad it's good. It's so ridiculous.
megalomaniacal perfectionist chef has helped normalize the idea that chefs who have achieved a certain
Shut
level
up.
of excellence
No.
not only have the right to abuse those below them, but that enduring it will encourage them to become excellent as a result. Personally, though, I don't think that anyone that makes a grilled cheese sandwich that looks like this
You've got him
has
there.
any right to call themselves a chef. In the menu, Julian Slowick is the
There's a big shot at Gordon Ramsay.
maniac chef taken to an extreme. His staff practically see him as a god and have a
Did he mention Gordon's credentials? Isn't Gordon sitting on something like 17 Michelin stars across all of his establishments? Let me check. 17! Yeah, his restaurants have a total of 17. Off the dome.
cult-like level of obedience, literally placing their lives on the line for him, where head chefs hover over the shoulders of their cooks and respond with a chorus of whenever they're given a command. Julian's motivations and actions are mysterious, which makes it
I have a challenge for salary, actually. I have a challenge for salary. Go to a nice restaurant with an open kitchen and watch them. Go to a couple if you can. Go to more than that if you can. Find one that has an open kitchen. Go there. See if they have like an affordable set menu or something. Go there. Have that with your wife or otherwise partner or whatever you have. Check it out. Go watch it.
all the more
It's really fun and interesting to watch. Sometimes you feel weird though, because often you have to go past the kitchen to get to the bathrooms. Feels kind of weird. Sometimes it's scary, like the servers might run into you when you just want to go piss.
unnerving. He's begun to loathe his patrons, both the ones who refuse to understand his art and the ones who revere him. The menu doesn't offer any explanation as to how Julian reached this point, which adds to the film's mystery, and it doesn't explain how his staff came to be so devoted to him that they go along with this multi-course kamikaze menu.
I don't think it adds to mystery. My impression is that he's like an extreme portrayal of how people view these hardcore head chefs. We're just meant to understand that he embodies that perception of the high-end kitchen.
But it speaks to the level of cult-like behavior within the kitchens ran by the world's greatest chefs. If these cooks wish to become brilliant themselves, then they must follow the orders of their god. Much like real cults, some of the world's best kitchens use similar tactics.
It's gonna take some work here. What is he gonna say? Cutting you off from family, contact with the outside world? Like,
As them to indoctrinate their staff into their ways.
You're going
And
way
by
too
this,
far.
I mean emotionally breaking them down to rebuild them into the kind of person who will unquestioningly follow orders. Clinical psych.
Yeah, but salary. These environments, we've also gone over how they reproduce that kind of personality, the dominant personality, the person who wants to rise up, have their own establishment and be that dominating head chef. So I don't know.
Psychologist Dr. Margaret Thaler Singer laid out the criteria and behaviors for a group or organization to be considered a cult that attempts to take control over a person's thinking and thought patterns, and every one of these correlates to what you will see in many fine dining establishments.
What you will see in
First
many
is to keep a person unaware of how they're being changed.
What the f*** is this?
The kitchen, this means creating an environment in which a chef has little to no control over their own actions. And
Yeah, because they need to prepare 7,000 cucumbers in the morning. I want to play basketball though. Like, what do you mean?
submitting to the demands of the head chef.
Yes.
By going along with this, a person in turn can be rewarded by affirmations, including being told how they have potential to be great. Then there's controlling a person's social and or physical environment, along with their time. Kitchens often require absurd work schedules, where cooks have to work weeks that can be upwards of 80 hours long. That commitment can
Sometimes,
be
sure.
praised or even seen as a source of pride, but in the process they can end up becoming further detached from the reality outside of the kitchen. This leads into
Damn, sounds like a whole lot of jobs even.
the next step, creating a sense of powerlessness in a person. By removing them from their family, friends, and other outsiders, they become normalized to the kitchen environment, where others celebrate unhealthy work.
Normalized to the kitchen environment. Cannot survive without a gas supply.
Work-life balances, along with accepting varying levels of toxicity from head chefs and other colleagues. Next is what's referred to as the sacred science. Everything within the group or kitchen is considered to be the ultimate truth, which is held above all other truths found outside of the kitchen. Any beliefs or experiences to the contrary are either denied or reinterpreted to fit their environment.
You're gonna have to be specific. May I have an example? What in the are you talking about?
As the holder of the truth, the leader, i.e. the head chef, is above question or criticism. You do as they say, no questions asked. To uphold all of this, there also needs to be a system of punishments and rules.
When I ate at Nell in Australia, which was a very expensive experience, it wasn't great. It wasn't great. However, something of note is that we ordered a non-alcoholic drink pairing, and the man responsible for that came out to explain with pride that it was put under his control. He was trusted to develop it, and he was very proud of that. And this is like an expensive, high-end place. Very wanky, very like conceptual dining, and that was happening even there. Now, he f***ed up, it sucked. But, okay, he certainly was not brainwashed into cult-like obedience and not having his own free thought.
Rewards to promote learning the ideology of the group, their belief systems, and going along with the approved behaviors. When someone in the kitchen behaves...
Okay, but salary. You established earlier that you think fine dining is about experimentation and pushing the limits. How does this line up?
well, they can be rewarded with praise or even having one of their creations
Did you tell them it sucked? Don't tell people who are serving you food that they suck until afterwards.
put on the menu. If someone were to offer criticisms, misbehave, or even question the group, that in turn can be met with punishment. The head chef is above all else. In the context of the kitchen, they are God, and this God doesn't want to hear what their followers have to offer. They don't want to hear their thoughts on how to innovate. They just want obedience.
I mean, if we want to look at like a hyper, ultra high-end fine dining experimental place, you look at Alchemy in Denmark. That is the crazy one that's like 50 courses, a 6-hour sitting, tons of staff, tons of chefs. They have, dedicated research kitchens where it's a bunch of chefs putting together different ideas, trying different things. I don't know, like certain kinds of kitchens, this works out, especially if you're doing a particular kind of cuisine in a traditional way, where there is for it to be this cuisine, it has to be this way. That is correct in this context. It probably is right to clamp down and go, no, you do it this way, otherwise it's not going to be what it's supposed to be. But then just don't work at a kitchen like that. That's not where you want to be, right?
A group of competent chefs who are willing to follow every command that comes from their mouth, because the head of the kitchen knows the secret to the universe. Just go along with what they say and only reply with, "Yes, chef." All of this is done in the name of food. The menu exemplifies all.
I think during a frantic service, every person working should have the freedom to respond to the chef in a 5-minute monologue when told to do something. I'm sure it will have no negative effects.
Of this system to an extreme. The chefs in Julian's kitchen are without doubt a cult, and it's not too far removed from the reality of many kitchens around the world.
Many?
Even though Julian and his staff
Not too far removed from many. I think it's cartoonishly extreme to the point of deliberate comedy, but that's just me, I guess.
In essence, a death cult. The menu highlights how it's not just the culture in the kitchen that's flawed, but the diners themselves who have transformed fine dining into what it is now. A pretentious, costly experience which is either revered too much or underappreciated. It's become something which the wealthy consume because it's expected of them, but it's lost any meaning to them as well.
Can we have some examples of the people consuming it that way, please?
It's a thing tech bros do so they can brag about it to their co-workers, and something that has its success determined by aggressively picky food critics. People that are just there.
Sorry, you're on YouTube. There's kind of been this thing, the rise of the food vloggers. Dog, it ain't... You're like stuck in the past.
Because the name attached to the restaurant and the prestige that comes with it. The bear, on the other hand, seems to want to uphold these values. It treats prestige as a desirable goal and wants to cater to the kind of people we see in the menu. I understand and accept that the creators of the bear are well within their rights to share their love of fine dining and everything that comes with it. But when it comes to the cost of it, be it financial, human, or other, in today's world where we're beginning to recognize and rightfully judge what goes into the creation of something, it seems oddly irresponsible of the show. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention how fine dining is one of many high-class industries, which is led and staffed in the UK. Only 10 of the 172 restaurants with a Michelin star are led by women head chefs. And of the over 250,000 professional chefs there, only 18.5% are women.
Salary out here telling us women need to get in the kitchen where they belong.
Fine dining will always exist.
Yep.
And obviously it will have to find ways to survive, since what it is right now can't continue.
What it is. Looks like some of these establishments already are dying and have died. You're making a prediction that is not really a prediction because you're describing what is already occurring and has already occurred, brother.
Regardless of how special a dish is, any amount of exploitation, discrimination, and abuse does not justify its existence, and we shouldn't convince aspiring chefs that tolerating workplace toxicity is a necessary step to becoming brilliant. After all, these prestigious chefs are still just humans, and if they're worthy of being called an arsehole, then they should work on being less of an arsehole. Food is a beautiful thing, and beauty can be found in the
Yep, it's a pretty normal loaf of bread, yeah?
simple. It's why I love bread, because it's a simple idea that has had more influence on food around
Is it?
the world than anything that you can find in the kitchens run by the world's greatest chefs.
Bro, they serve bread. These... Why does he think these places don't have bread? What is this? What are you talking about? Bread also gets extremely complex as well, as you seem to have recognized.
It can be transformed into all kinds of things, and it's nourishing. It literally makes you feel good. Oh,
it's nourishing. I would suggest what you will get in a fine dining restaurant is better for you than a block of carbs. I'm going to tell you right now that a 6-course, 8-course, 10-course, whatever course tasting menu probably healthier for you than eating a loaf of bread. Now, this might seem controversial, but I had to say it.
and if you fancy learning how to make this bread yourself, I actually made a video of it on my Patreon for supporters, so check that out if you want to give it a go. Not only is of it on my Patreon.
Why the crust so ass? Why is that crust so ass? What did you do? Oh.
For supporters, so check that out if you want to give it a go. Not only is it nourishing, but it can be made by anyone. Only 5 simple ingredients you can pick up at any grocery store, and after a few hours...
Grocery stores, by the way, famous for never exploiting workers. Salary. Uh-oh, buddy.
You have something that you can be proud of. Fine dining is the illusion of pride, propped up by the environments that warp the minds of young chefs to believe.
fed the streamer
Thank you.
$1.99 Superberry. Did the street Indian vendors win again?
I suppose.
Believe that a tiny ounce of validation from the masters is the most meaningful thing in the world.
Why are you rubbing it like that? What are you doing?
The idea that pain and suffering
that's
are
fine.
integral to the creation of great art, which is something people have believed to be true for as long as we can remember. The simple fact, though, is that great art can be made without pain. In our society, we see pain as a necessary component for great art because it's marketable to those who wish to invest in it. Pain is a tool that gives something...
I don't think that's true. Certain kinds, yes. There are certain things that would not exist without pain, but you don't need pain.
More value when it's produced by the privileged, because unlike someone working in a factory for next to no pay, These chefs have the choice to incorporate suffering as a unique selling point, and it's a disgusting, unnecessary romanticization of the artistic process. Fine dining shouldn't exist as it is, and from the looks of it, it seems as though it won't be.
There are people who are so driven to pursue their art that what would be painful for you is not painful to them. They just grind at it because they have to, because they're driven to it. So it's the whole do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life kind of thing.
Be able to continue existing for very long since it's so unsustainable. I know that the majority of you haven't sampled fine dining before, so maybe I'm wasting my breath about this.
An old worker loading water says, someone must suffer for art to be made, because someone must work to feed that artist who contributes nothing of objective value to society. Fair. You got him. You got me.
But I was rubbed the wrong way by the bear's reverence of the field and felt like talking about it. And who knows, maybe the show will prove me wrong and Kami will one day go back to making sandwiches and find his happiness. But even if you're unable to afford the fine dining experience or aren't interested in it, the next time you eat, take a moment to appreciate the beauty and joy of something simple. There's a reason why people say...
Me eating a Microsoft pud. Also, this is me up. Do you know how complex the path everything took to get to being this loaf of bread is? You're critiquing the show for like hiding details and like being irresponsible, and then you're acting like ingredients just spawn into the grocery store and everything's lovely there. Like, what is this?
It's the best thing since sliced bread because it's so damn good.
Yeah, another reason it seems absurd that you'd call bread underrated. Yes, there is the saying, the best thing since sliced bread. Yeah.